I also had a feeling that this game might be something that could turn into a series and continue for a long time.
The iconic franchise is now passing Frozen 2 as the biggest global opening for an animated film.
Turn your home into the most exciting place in the universe with Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Welcome to the new Mushroom Kingdom, new Super Mario Brothers.
今までのテレビゲームでは体験できなかった新しい面白さ、楽しさに驚いた。そしてのめり込んだ。遊んだ人だけが知っている。
Totally doubt Mario Brothers Adventures you ever played and then some, but this is juiced up 16-bit only on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System Mario. So it's bigger Mario, better Mario, in your face Mario. It's Raccoon Mario, Mario throwing fireballs, Mario hurling turnips, Mario negotiating an arms deal. Okay, maybe not. It's Mario like you've never seen him. What's 2 plus 2 Mario? What's the capital of Ohio? Mario.
He's back. All you had to do was ask.
アメリカ帰りのファミコンソフト、スーパーマリオ USA。
I'm in line too because the director of 2020 said, Stossel, I hate to ask, but you've got to help me get my kid a copy of Super Mario Brothers 2. This man came all the way from Indiana to get one. He came 1,000 miles just for this game?
Yes. I've done 7 stores a day for 3 weeks now. I cannot find it.
The Super Mario Brothers face each foe undaunted, time and time again. But who are these guys? Who are the Mario Brothers?
I don't know. The hockey players?
All I can think of is the guy in the library, Mario Puzi.
They're characters on Nintendo.
Have you ever heard of Nintendo?
No? Who's he?
I think it's something in Japanese.
Mario, where are you? It's Atari Mario Brothers with Mario from Donkey Kong, his brother Luigi, and lots of crazy creatures. And it's twice the fun when 2 play at once, because you need all the help you can get. Mario, where are you? Mario Brothers, new from Atari.
It's Donkey Kong, the arcade sensation, and now you can play it at home.
Hang on, sweetheart! I'm gonna save you!
Now you can play Donkey Kong on your ColecoVision, Atari VCS, or Intellivision video game system. Donkey Kong has multiple screens, just like the arcade game.
You're not gonna stop me, you stupid ape!
Play Donkey Kong on your ColecoVision, Atari VCS, or Intellivision video game system.
Don't worry, darling!
In 1980, Nintendo released Radar Scope, a game where you try to defend your space station from the Gamma Raiders. The perspective was neat, and although it looks very similar to Space Invaders and Galaxian, it does its own thing. For example, you can't just pick any enemy off, they have to be close enough for the shot to hit. You also have this meter showing the health of the space station. Still, this wasn't enough to keep people in America interested. Around the time Radar Scope came out in Japan, Minoru Arakawa established Nintendo of America, and after some positive reception from tests with Radar Scope cabinets in Seattle, Washington, he ordered 3,000 cabinets. Nintendo contracted Far East Video, a Seattle-based distribution company that worked in arcade sales. From what I can find, there were only 2 employees at that point in time, Al Stone and Ron Judy. They told Arakawa that if Nintendo makes some good games, they could definitely sell them all. It took 4 months by boat for Radar Scope to make it stateside, and after some sales, they still had 2,000 cabinets. At this point, Far East Video was hurting pretty bad. Ron Judy was stuck waiting on Nintendo to come up with a big hit, not only for the financial security, but because he borrowed $50,000 from his aunt's life savings. Arakawa also had to deal with his father-in-law giving him shit for his genius decision. To ease a bit of pressure, Nintendo of America relocates from Manhattan to a warehouse in Tukwila. The warehouse was managed by a former Far East Video employee by the name of Don James, and about a month later he hired his college friend, Howard Phillips, as an assistant. With less than 10 employees, the company continues with Game & Watch distribution along with marketing, advertising, sales, etc. But Arakawa was still worried about the whole radar scope burned into his business, and he ends up calling his father-in-law, Nintendo CEO Hiroshi Yamauchi. He's been listening to his son-in-law beg him to get a top game designer to make a game that'll sell in America. Nintendo of America isn't exactly a big part of Nintendo at the moment, and everyone back in Japan's kind of busy working on shit. But they do need something to break into the American market. So Yamauchi gets their head engineer Gunpei Yokoi's assistant. This dude that was hired back in 1977 after an interview set up by his dad through a buddy of his as an apprentice in the planning department after showing Yamauchi some wooden clothes hangers for kids in the shape of elephants and crows. He did help draw the art for Sheriff, Space Firebird, and Radar Scope, and he has a degree in industrial design, so who knows, what ideas do you have, artist man? The game has to appeal to Americans, and at the time Nintendo was a Popeye licensee. They released Popeye playing cards, and Popeye characters were well known by Americans, so it's settled. But what do you do in this game? You play as Popeye. But where? Obviously, this Popeye idea doesn't happen, and while many people say it's because Nintendo couldn't get the rights, during a lawsuit that I'll talk about later, Yokoi said it was a technical issue. When asked why they switched out the characters, Gunpei Yokoi basically said they couldn't get the Popeye characters to look decent on their hardware. You might be thinking, but they made a Popeye game the very next year. Yeah, but that game looks like this. Donkey Kong has a resolution of 256 by 224. Popeye has a resolution of 512 by 448, which is a stupid high resolution for 1982. For comparison, Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 are both 254 by 400. I found this on Strategy Wiki. Technologically, the arcade game uses a technique that was popularized by a few Bally Midway games which mixed high-resolution foreground sprites with low-resolution background displays. This resulted in extremely sharp and detailed graphics for the main characters and contributed to its success. It also made the graphics difficult, if not impossible, to convert for home systems without a tremendous amount of compromise. Here's an early design document with sprites for Olive Oil, Bluto, and Popeye. Do you see how small these characters are? So the Popeye idea isn't going to happen, but the premise is still kept. Someone going up a construction site to rescue someone from someone else. So Mr. Assistant has to redo the characters. What would be a good fit? He takes from the fairy tale Beauty and the Beast as well as King Kong. He replaces Bluto with a gorilla, something he said was nothing too evil or repulsive. Popeye was replaced with a short, nameless pudgy man, and Olive Oil was replaced with a nameless lady. The stage was going to be one long trek up the construction site, but the vertical scrolling idea wasn't happening either. The programmers basically said that they might as well make 4 separate games. So the stage was chopped into 4 separate screens. The game was also designed to be kinda like a maze game. You couldn't jump and instead had to just get out of the way of barrels by getting on a ladder and waiting for it to roll by. It was later decided that they used a button on the radar scope cabinet for jumping. In an Iwata-ass interview about New Super Mario Bros. Wii, Iwata and Miyamoto talked about this. So what you're saying is that if that cabinet hadn't happened to have a button, Mario wouldn't have jumped? You can't imagine Mario without thinking of him jumping. Well, that might have been the case. Originally, it was a game where you had to escape from a maze. To allow players to jump and avoid dangers would have spoiled the strategic element of the game. But then we thought, if you had a barrel rolling towards you, what would you do? Naturally, you'd jump over it. Of course, you'd jump over it. So we decided to use the button to allow players to jump, and when we made a prototype to try it out, it worked really well. I think that if we hadn't allowed Mario to jump, it would have most likely proved to be a horrendously difficult game to play. The game was constantly hitting walls with technical limitations. Miyamoto had to keep asking the programmers if his ideas were possible. There was going to be voice clips for Lady, but they went unused. From a development interview from the launch of the NES Classic, at first the lady that Donkey Kong kidnaps was shouting help. She talked. She yelled. And when Mario executed a good jump, she would praise him by saying. However, some in the company were worried the pronunciation might be off, so we had a native English speaker who was an English conversation teacher listen to it. And that person thought she was talking about seaweed. Seaweed, like in the ocean? Yeah, it sounded like kelp. While the game ideas were entirely Nintendo, they actually subcontracted Ikegami Tsushinki for programming. I'll come back to this later. The player character was designed pretty much entirely out of limitations. I'm going to shorten this to get to the point quicker. Miyamoto explains that he figured, hey, I can draw, and other games with characters have these super simple figures, probably because the programmer didn't really know how to draw. I'm no professional artist, but let me just start with some eyes, a nose, and oh, fuck. Okay, so hair. Probably easier to animate if there wasn't any hair, so give him a hat. Then you got his eyes directly underneath. Put some pixels under the nose. What is that? A mouth or a mustache? Mustache. His body is simple, but you can't see his arms moving very well, so he gets overalls to make the movement easier to see. The character fits the construction site settings, so he gets gloves, but they're also to help show his hands as he jumps. In-game, it seems he doesn't have them, probably because of a color limitation issue or something, but who knows, it's been like 40 years. So the game's getting some work done. Normally an arcade game took about 3 months. This one's taking a bit longer. What's the name of the lady? What about the little dude you control? Okay, what's the name of the game? kind of name is that? Well, it was the working title for the game before the name was finalized. Because it wasn't changed in time, the PCBs still have TKG written on them. Yokoi called Nintendo's export manager Shinichi Todori and asked him for name suggestions, since he understood the international markets and had helped in naming earlier games. Yokoi had 2 suggestions. The name should have the word Kong and be comical. Todori had a long list of names which he shrank down to 10 and then sent off to Nintendo.
Among those 10 names was the eventual final selection.
So after like 4 or 5 months, the game is finally complete and arrives at Nintendo of America as conversion kits for Radar Scope. It gets there and first impressions from the warehouse are rough. It's not a shooter. It isn't at all like a maze game. What the hell kind of name is Donkey Kong?
What was that like? Do you remember when Donkey Kong sort of, like, when that game came out, what that was like? Like, was it popular?
Well, it was pretty crazy because the first time we saw it, we immediately thought Donkey Kong, what the heck kind of a name is that?
The game is tested at 2 bars in Seattle, Washington. The game does $30 a day for a week. That's 120 plays a day. The small warehouse team starts the process of turning the old Radar Scope cabinets into the new game. The only character to have a name was Donkey Kong. During development, the player went from Osan and then Mr. Video, because the idea was that he was going to be in every game Miyamoto made. The Japanese instructions didn't name him anything, and the American arcade instructions already had Jumpman written down, but Nintendo of Japan wanted Nintendo of America to name the character. They thought it would be funny to name him after the warehouse landlord.
Then Japan actually asked us one time if we wanted to rename the main character Jumpman, and Mr. Arakawa, who is the president, and myself looked at the character, and we had a landlord that happened to be named Mario as well, and we'd never met the guy, so we thought it'd be funny to name this main character Mario after our landlord in South Center, and that's actually how Mario got his name.
That is a deep cut of Nintendo history right there. That's amazing. Do you think? Did he ever know? Did he get that? Wow.
Yeah, he knows. It's been written in a couple of books, and so.
It's new to me. That is so cool.
The American Donkey Kong flyer had the name Mario. Japan wouldn't see him with the name until Donkey Kong Jr. As for the lady...
Yeah, little known fact is that my girlfriend at the time, she was the reason, through her father's connection to the Far East Video Company, was the reason I got offered the consulting job. And so after we named Mario, Mr. Arakawa thought it'd be really funny to name the heroine, the female character in the game, Pauline, which was actually taken from my girlfriend's name, and so she eventually became my wife. So effectively, Pauline's named after my ex-wife.
That is so cool.
Like many other arcade games, the intro to Donkey Kong sounds a lot like an existing piece of music. This time, the theme to Dragnet, an old radio and TV police drama. The game Wizard of War from the previous year also had music that sounds like it. And a year after Donkey Kong, Pitfall came out, and it too seems to use it, but as a death sound instead. I'm playing this through the Arcade Archives re-release. It comes with 3 versions: the original early Japanese release, a later Japanese release, and the international version we got in America. I'll go through what makes these versions different because there's some pretty fun differences. Nothing too crazy though. Also, while recording, I try to get the game at the proper aspect ratio, so if you see a shimmering effect, I'm sorry, this game is at a 8:7 aspect ratio and I had to eyeball it. I'll be playing the international version since it's what we got over here. Donkey Kong's gameplay is simple, and watching the attract mode gives you a good idea of what to do. You just have to make it to the top. Donkey Kong was one of the first platformers ever. As far as I can find, it was the second one. The first one apparently being Space Panic by Universal, and that game didn't even have a jump button. Not that universal. Donkey Kong is like a manual transmission. In modern games, when you climb up something, you usually just hit up and the game makes you get up in one go. Here, if you climb a ladder, you have to hold up until you get completely off the ladder and are back on your own 2 feet. Which kind of makes sense because the animation makes it look like he's climbing up the girder and off the ladder when he gets up here. If you try to move and you haven't gotten up completely, you won't do anything. There's also your jump. You do not leave the ground unless you know you are safe. When you jump, you are committed to that angle until you land and catch your footing. And when I say catch your footing, I mean you actually have to wait a fraction of a second to land properly. It isn't a big deal, but be aware of it. Everything about you feels like it's supposed to come off as small and weak. I mean, the sound of you jumping sounds like it's unsure of itself. Let's start with the first stage, 25 meter. This has got to be one of the most recognizable video game stages ever made. The gorilla throwing barrels, the girder pattern, the hammers, the ladders, the music. You use 2 of any of those and your granddad can connect the dots in less than 4 seconds.
Up here, Johnny! Go up Up that ladder. Take that barrel. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Up that other ladder.
The very first thing Donkey Kong does is throw a blue barrel straight down, which hits the oil drum, causing it to go up in flames and let out a little fireball. If you don't move out of the way, it'll land right on you. Donkey Kong doesn't throw a lot of blue ones, but if one makes it to the oil drum, another fireball will come out. Barrels can very easily overwhelm you if you don't plan ahead. All it takes is one barrel above you going down a ladder, and now your jump is out the window. Barrel behavior is pretty interesting since they do a lot of things that go unnoticed. For example, the barrels are random, right? You can just get unlucky and have nowhere to go. You have too many to jump. There's two that might roll down in front of you. What can you do? You could stop walking towards the ladder. Walk towards the ladder and it might come down. Stop and it might just ignore you. This is called barrel steering, but don't think you can just cheese 25 meter. Barrels aren't completely dependent on you. If you walk towards a ladder and there's a barrel above you, it has a higher chance to roll down if you have the stick tilted towards it. I say stick tilted towards it because it's not looking at where you're going, just that the stick is pointing towards the ladder. I can jump in this direction from way over here and still influence this barrel by holding left while in the air. You have influence over them, not control. If you don't do anything to influence barrels, they'll go down whatever ladder they want. You never have 100% control over the barrels, but I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's talk about the first stage of the first loop. Some people call this the level, but I call it the loop since it goes up by one every time you defeat DK. The NES manual also calls it the loop. The game goes on until you lose all your lives, so after beating the game, you keep playing with the difficulty set higher to give more of a challenge. Back to the first barrel. It's pretty important because the game will force all barrels to go down every ladder until the oil drum is lit. Because the barrel on the very first loop just bounces straight down, this really only takes effect on the next barrel. The next course of action is to check if the barrel is currently on the same girder as you or below you. If this is the case, then the barrel is not allowed to go down any ladders. Now comes the more complicated stuff. If the barrel is above you, the game checks a value that is determined by what loop you're in and how much time you've been in the level. I'm dumbing this down, but put simply, this value is basically a difficulty. It starts at 1, and after about 33 seconds, it goes up by 1. Here's a table showing how barrels work when controlling them. To begin with, you have only a 25% chance to make a barrel go down. This means that to the beginner player, there is a big 75% chance that the barrel doesn't get in your way, making this first stage much more forgiving for a first impression. Barrels can also go down broken ladders, but you can't. The worst barrels are the ones people call crazy barrels or wild barrels. These are the ones that Donkey Kong throws down. The very first barrel is a crazy barrel that bounces straight down. Depending on the internal difficulty level, you will see barrels that range from dropping straight down to the bottom girder to these scary ass bouncing bastards that seem to home in on you. There is a 1 in 16th chance of a crazy barrel coming out whenever Donkey Kong grabs one. While looking around the internet for info, I found the Donkey Kong forum, which led me to a Donkey Kong beginner's manual, a 108-page Google Doc written by Donkey Kong gods. And this is one of my main sources of info for this video, so if anything sounds weird, it's fact-checked by true Jumpman patriots. Anyway, there are 4 types of crazy barrels. 3 of them depend on the internal difficulty. Type 1 wild barrels are just random. They don't really move around much. I don't think I've ever seen them bounce out of this area, really. Type 2 barrels are the scariest barrels in the game. They are programmed to bounce in your direction. It's not enough to stay away. You need to juke them. Barrels can only change direction after bouncing, so use this to your advantage. Type 3 barrels are actually not as dangerous as Type 2, and if you play long enough, you'll start to only get Type 3s. Like Type 2s, these try to follow you, but these instead try to get in your way, only going half the distance towards you between each bounce, as if it's really only trying to scare you into making a mistake. The final type of wild barrel can appear whenever and doesn't bounce. These have been nicknamed bombs and fall straight down, only ever landing on the very bottom platform. Sort of. Every once in a while, this game likes to break its own rules. The only barrels that are always the same are the first 3. The crazy barrel and the 2 after are never crazy. From just playing, you'll notice that when you first start, crazy barrels just bounce around. It's not until you stay on the level for too long or loop back to it that you'll notice, damn, that one had some spin put on it. I'm sure you know what the hammers do, but unlike Smash Bros, you can't jump while using it. You also cannot climb ladders, and if you screw up, a barrel can sneak under it while Mario holds it up to swing. I usually just go off of how long the music plays to tell how much time I have left, but it also starts flashing about halfway through its timer. The hammer lasts about 10 seconds, but the timer stops counting down while hitting something, so don't worry. It shouldn't disappear right after coming out of the braking animation, unless it was right about to end when you hit. It's never happened to me.
What the fuck?
Barrels get you 300 points. Blue barrels and fireballs get you 300, 500, or 800 points. It was thought that this was completely random, but it was determined later that you have a 50% chance of getting 500 and then 25 for either 300 or 800. But it turns out that due to some weird coding thing with the later Firefox enemy, when hitting a fireball or Firefox, the actual distribution of points for these is 50% of the time you get 300 points, 33.33% of the time you get 500, and 16.67, 800. Because of how the rest of the code is written, the check to determine which type of object is being smashed actually gets an incorrect result a third of the time. Basically, 1 out of every 3 frames, the game thinks that the Firefox is actually a regular barrel, and if it is smashed during this time, you will always receive 300 points. In addition, Don believes that this will actually affect all Fireballs and Firefoxes in the game, including Fireballs on Barrel and Pi Factory screens. Keep in mind that the original 25-50-25 distribution still holds true for Blue Barrels and Pies. This stage shouldn't be too difficult, just a bit strange for anyone used to Mario being able to jump 100 different ways. Though you can do this. Don't think you can jump at the wall like this and live from any height though. Any differences in the Japanese version?
Piracy will not be tolerated. I will shoot you down and punish you. No survivors!
Fascinating. This has been the news. Thank you and good night.
We still have 20 minutes. I can't believe I couldn't get a copy of my own game last night.
To do this, climb the ladder, and when you get to the top, tap to the right. You want Mario to stay facing away so you can center him with the ladder like this. Then jump to the right by flicking the stick at the same time you jump. Another weird trick in the early version is that if Mario's hand is on the girder, barrels will never roll down towards him. Damn, end of the game already. How'd that happen? This is the biggest difference between the Japanese and international versions. In Japan, you play through every level in order over and over. In the international release, we get this set of levels. To play through every stage, you'll have to play to the 3rd loop. Calling the stages by their heights can be a bit confusing, so from this point on, I'll be calling them by identifiable features: barrels, factory, jacks, and rivets. The rivet stage is a bit of a puzzle once you learn how the enemies in this stage work. All you have to do is remove the rivets holding the girders in place. As you play, these bigger fires start spawning in. They're called fires, but to differentiate between these and the others, they've been given the name Firefox or Foxfire. From what I can gather, the Foxfire is slightly different from the Fireball. Their hitboxes are pretty weird. Where did Firefox come from? The manual for the Atari 8-bit computer ports call this a Firefox and uses this sprite. It only uses this sprite. This port has no smaller Fireball. I also found some Tumblr posts from Weird Mario enemies that says Foxfire translates to Kitsunebi and refers to various lights and fires created by foxes according to legends. This fire is often said to be made from withered trees, and so the Foxfires may very well have actually been the light of bioluminescent fungus. This does not really apply to the fire enemy, being clearly a fire of industrial origin, but it's still pretty cool to me. Wait, Tumblr's still alive? The perfect edition of the Great Mario Character Encyclopedia from 1994, which sorts characters by species, lists the fire as part of the Ghost Clan. He has been Mario's longest standing enemy character for more than 10 years. He is an elder of the Fire and Ghost Clan. He moves slowly, but he is a nuisance. Try to get out of the way at the right time. Why is the Game Boy version listed separate? They're the same thing. The fire from the Game Boy version of Donkey Kong has a marshmallow-like body and cute eyes, but if you are careless and touch it, you will be burned to a crisp. It is difficult to jump over it, so use a hammer to knock it down. Both fire dudes are actually affected by the internal difficulty. Only thing it really seems to do is make them move quicker. They move faster going to the right than to the left. They can only go up or down ladders if they approach it from the left. On the rivet stage, they will only ever go down a ladder if you're beneath them. If you're on the same level as them or above, they'll only ever go up. Sometimes you'll get a fire that just sits in place. If they just climbed a ladder and froze, they're frozen for about 6 seconds. If they freeze out in the open, it's anywhere from 1 to 6 seconds. Only 5 Firefoxes can appear at a time. Since this is the first loop, the Firefoxes will appear about every 4 seconds. The Firefoxes can appear on any girder except the very top one. Which side depends on where you're standing. Imagine a line straight down the middle. Whatever half of the screen you're on, they'll appear on the opposite half. Firefoxes may be quick and scary, but they can't jump, which means you can cut them off. So the strategy is to get them all to appear on one side, clear a half, then you can use the hammers to defeat a couple, and now they'll spawn on the other half that's completely cut off, allowing you to comfortably clear the rest of the stage. But before I end the level, I'm gonna dab on this fucking monkey. So what's happening here is that I'm forcing the game to extend the area under Mario that counts as jumping over something. When you perform a standing jump, a small box appears under Mario. If a barrel, a jack, a fireball, really most things that can harm you is detected by this little box, you get points. If you're walking towards something and jump, the area the game checks for hazards is extended by a lot so that you can get points for the group of stuff you're jumping over. What I'm doing is jumping so that I stay in place, and once my feet are off the air, I flick the stick to the side. This makes the game use the longer scanning area, allowing me to get points off of things that aren't really beneath me. Doesn't matter what side I tilt towards either, it extends both ways. By the way, hurry up, you're on a timer. If you don't see it, it's the bonus. We're on the first loop, so it starts at 5,000 and goes down by 100 every 2 seconds on every level that isn't the barrel stage, because the timer is tied to when Donkey Kong throws out barrels, so the timer over there kind of fluctuates. It's really weird. Wait a minute, that's not the victory theme I remember. To hear that in the arcade game, you'll have to beat the second loop. I will mention that the message before a stage starts is different in the Japanese version. Over here it says, how high can you get? But in Japan it says, how high can you try?
Please, Rumble, you gotta stop!
Back to the game, it's now on loop 2, so we start with 6,000 on the bonus timer, but now it drops every 1.667 seconds. Also, remember that the timer on the barrel stage is weird, so that's not that accurate here. You now start with a 50% influence over barrels, and wild barrels are on their way to get that ass banned. On this loop, Donkey Kong's first barrel goes bouncing down towards the bottom corner. If you hold forward right from the beginning, it actually can't get you, but if you add a jump to this, you'll be right in front of where it lands once it gets to the bottom girder, allowing you to leech a little 100 off of it. Because this barrel takes longer to light the oil drum, the barrels Donkey Kong rolls afterwards make a beeline towards you. One quick tip, don't try to get a shitload of points if you're not already really good at Donkey Kong. Your timer is easily manageable, but then barrels start getting scary. The fireballs start climbing faster, and if you're just starting out, it's better to get through stages, and if you think you can handle it, maybe try to steer some barrels into groups to score more out of them. The confidence this hammer gives you leaves none the moment you realize you've gotten one girder and now have an army of barrels raining down. You get a lot more points living, I'm just saying. By the way, jumping over 3 barrels only gives you 500 points. It displays 800, but that is an error. You can only get 800 from destroying things with hammers. One other way you influence barrels is if you're under a ladder. You could be on the ladder, on the girder below, or climbing up a ladder from down here. Standing on the uphill side of ladders is something to make a habit of when waiting for barrels to pass, so you can be completely out of their way and have a heads up for the ones that will come by later. Be careful not to accidentally jump into the barrels above you when you're near the edges. One thing that's a little bit weird about these old arcade games is how their sound work. Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., and Mario Bros. All used both digital and analog sound. Walking, jumping, and the big crashing noise Donkey Kong makes are analog. I wanted to know why the Arcade Archives release has different walking sounds. Best explanation I found was on some Reddit post. Fellow DK Upright owner here, the walking sound is indeed wrong, it's just missing the pitch oscillation. As I understand it, that walking sound and pitch oscillation is handled by an analog sound generator in the real arcade machine's board stack. This means the way it sounds is totally independent from the ROM. The ROM can only decide when the sound is played. For whatever reason, Hamster chose not to fully emulate the analog sound generator when developing the emulator used in the Switch version of Donkey Kong, but I find the rest of it to be near perfect emulation of the real game. They absolutely nailed the gameplay and controls. I even get roughly the same scores as I do on a real machine. After beating the barrel board again, we get to the Jack stage. I know what you're thinking. Hey, it's that stage from Smash. No, it's not. The original was played on a screen rotated on its side.
This is Bill Mitchell, the world's greatest Donkey Kong player.
This leads to an issue with interesting results when it comes to different ports. Some had altered stages, squash stages, and sure you could go for keeping the aspect ratio, but then you end up with black bars on the sides of the screen. Then Donkey Kong was converted for the Famicom/NES. As someone who had made the original, how did you feel when you tried that out? It felt stretched sideways. I know people like this port, but after getting good at the arcade game, this port is so easily I consistently broke 25 meter. I think Donkey Kong spawns too many barrels, and then me getting points is forcing the game to pop up the little hundreds and pushing the game so hard it has a seizure. What the fuck? So back to getting good. This stage has the most platforming out of all of them. Pauline's items were scattered around the Rivet stage too, but I didn't really talk about them. They're all worth the same points, but they're worth more depending on the loop. On the first loop, 300. On the second, 500. Afterwards, 800. They're not very hard to get here. The umbrella is right above you, free from danger. The hat is across the first lift and has a fireball wandering around. Lure the fireball by getting above it. Now you have a decision to make. Up or down. Down means having to deal with a fireball, possibly making you wait while also getting in the Jack's line of fire. You can skip this whole thing by jumping off the edge of the lifts here and landing right here. While the arcade instructions say you jump a distance of 2 sections of framework, you can actually jump 3 sections length. If you still haven't adjusted your mind to see Mario as just some guy, not a fantasy character that can jump higher than a basketball hoop, you'll die from falling. Mario can only survive jumps that are about his own height. Anything greater and you die. If it's a really big fall, you'll hear the falling sound. If the fireball comes down here and doesn't want to go back up, just jump. I think this counts as being above it so it can go up, though, like I mentioned earlier, this might be some kind of failsafe to allow the player to continue without having to wait until the player jumps out of frustration. From just watching it, I don't think it's random. I'm sure it does have something dictating whether or not it should be influenced. Up above is a purse. Getting it isn't really the hard part, although hitboxes in this game are kind of weird. What the fuck? The jump onto the girder isn't hard, it's the jump back that's dangerous. When you jump back, you're in the jack's way and you have to wait for Mario to catch his footing. That little bit of time is enough to get caught by the jack if your timing isn't good. The safe spot on this girder is the edge on the right. You can also dabble in the fireball. The hardest part of the stage is the very end. First time players will always try to dart to the ladder as quick as possible. It's what makes sense in the moment, but it's risky as all hell and you're probably gonna get hit right at the top of the ladder. To safely make it up, watch the jacks. I'm sure you've noticed they don't all land and fall in the same spot. Because they bounce 3 times, there are 2 safe places on this girder where Mario can stand. Right in front of the ladder and on the pulley system under Pauline. The jacks don't have any special case where they'll change pattern and kill you in the safe spots, but the pattern itself seems to be random. There are, in general, 3 kinds of springs: short, medium, and long. Long springs land right on the first pulley. Medium springs land half and half on the left side of it, and short springs land either completely off or barely on the pulley. The reason I say in general is because there's technically are more places for it to land, but they're so slightly off to the side you'll never actually notice besides the short spring landing a little on or off the pulley. To make it to the ladder and actually get to the top, I run over here to the far side, and when I see a long spring, I dart for the ladder because the next one will usually be a short or medium, and I'm quick enough that Mario doesn't get hit on the way up by the next one. This won't be this easy next time around though. In the Japanese versions, 75 meters is the 3rd stage, and is easier because it's on the first loop. Look at the speed of the elevators in the Japanese versus the international. Other than that, it's the same stage, but our first encounter with it is on the difficulty of the original's second encounter. We had to learn the damn level with the fireballs getting faster quicker than before, what the hell? Back to the rivets, and the fucking foxfires spawn quicker. I noticed that even though I would be on an early loop, sometimes a firefox would just reappear instantly, so I think it's not that the game is waiting whatever time to spawn the firefoxes, but instead that the timer is constantly checking to spawn one and it will just put one if it notices there are less than 5. I don't really know though because the hammer freezes time and 1981 programming is floaty with timing.
Not as easy as you thought, eh, Piggy? Okay, Mr. Wise Guy. Hi! Out of my way, shorty! Never send a hero to do a baby mutant ninja piggy's job!
Donkey Kong throws that crazy barrel even farther to the right now. He's out for blood. I swear there has to be something in the code that tells Donkey Kong to lob 2 right at you. There might be 1 normal barrel in between, but that shit happens just a little more than every once in a while. I know I notice patterns and other tiny shit that nobody cares about a lot, but it doesn't feel like a coincidence. Oh yeah, that wall kick can save your life. I don't know when the game determines you're too high up to kick off the wall, but you can make some dumbass jumps with it. The invisible walls and edges of girders stop you from doing anything with them, so don't try anything there. You'll probably waste your time or die. Fireballs also start to evolve from World Warrior to hyper fighting. Look, getting the bottom hammer is now really just an emergency measure. Get the hell away from the bottom. It is way too dangerous to be down here. I swear, every time I pick this thing up, everything on the stage gets even more aggressive. Only reason to pick it up now is to get the fireball out of the way before it— oh my god. Crazy barrels are type 2 for the first 66 seconds of the stage. This area right below Donkey Kong can be pretty bad, and you have to go through here because the only other ladder on this girder is the broken one. You'll have to choose which one to take. On one hand, the short one takes less time to get up, but is in the way of wild barrels, including bombs. The other one is longer, but can still get you killed by wild barrels. It's important to keep an eye on Donkey Kong because you can see when he reaches for the next one, and crazy barrels don't have an animation of him holding it up before letting it go or something. He just drops them. Take your time, steer barrels away, don't get cocky. I wonder how many people have no idea this is a stage in the game. In the original Japanese version, this was the 2nd stage and is labeled 50 meter. The NES version did not include this stage due to memory limitations. I know that sounds kinda dumb, but remember, Donkey Kong was a Famicom launch title. The other 2 games you could pick up on launch were Donkey Kong Jr. and Popeye. Like the NES port of Donkey Kong, Jr. has similar stuff missing, like cutscenes, graphics, and music, and I already showed you Popeye's sprite, but you should also know that they got rid of Wimpy. What the fuck, dude? At least Sweet Pea's still here. Anyway, I've seen the stage get called the Pie pie factory, conveyors. I think I once heard someone call it the foundry, and also just the factory. I don't know if this is intended to be some kind of bakery, and it looks like nobody seems to know either. Depending on the port, this is a cement tub, a sand pile, a cement pile, a coal bin, or just pies. There's an unused sprite of these things falling, but they never fall off the conveyor belt, so it's never used. It does look like a pie here, though. The stage has a lot going on. Pies come in from off-screen, the conveyor belts change directions, there are fireballs flying out of the oil drum in the middle, and Donkey Kong is constantly going back and forth. You got some free points in front of you and a conveyor belt above you. This lower conveyor belt goes back and forth and has pies appearing from either end depending on the direction the belt is going. Which way the belt is going is controlled by Donkey Kong. He's consistently going back and forth on the top conveyor belt. Whenever he reaches the left side, the bottom belt changes direction, so look before you leap. In the middle of the stage is a hammer that is so damn situational I barely ever pick it up. Choose a side to climb. Similarly to the rivet stage, fireballs here also take your position into account to choose where to spawn. Difference being that instead of the opposite half of the screen, they appear on the side you're on. Because you start on the left half, the first one that jumps out of the oil drum will jump to the left. Knowing this, you can climb on these ladders and have them wander around on this side while you gun it to the right. Because our first try at this stage is on the third loop, we get to try this with an instant 3 fireballs. The amount that jump out at the beginning is equal to the loop you're on, so at the 5th loop, you'll have 5 immediately. I feel like this is the reason they put the purse right here at the beginning. You'll see it, go right for it, and spread fireballs out. And the reason I think this is because in every other stage, Pauline's things are placed in somewhat dangerous areas. In the elevators level, I'll probably have to play musical chairs with the fireball for this one, and this bastard can get you trapped. In the rivets level, you have 2 far as hell from each other in opposite corners, and look at that, the purse is right in front of me, just a couple steps to the other half of the screen. Back to the conveyors. The 2 conveyors in the middle also change direction, but only when you're not near them. This doesn't seem to do much gameplay-wise, but once you get about halfway up these ladders, the belts will switch direction towards the oil drum. If you're below that line, they seem to both switch between going towards the drum or away whenever Donkey Kong goes over the drum towards the left. I don't know why they do that, because the pies falling into the drum don't do anything. Alright, so now that you made it to the top conveyor belts, all you have to do is climb these ladders. 2 problems. The ladders go up and down, meaning they can make you wait to climb, and to even reach them, you have to go towards the incoming pies. The ladders are random. They never take a long time to go back up, but even a second can feel like eternity with a fireball goofing around at your feet. One useful trick to retreat back down is to just hold down while riding the belt. You're already moving towards it from this side, so you just hold down and Mario will grab the ladder and climb down as soon as he can, though this is probably more useful down here when fireballs get near. After making it up to the ladder, you may hesitate to climb up because of Donkey Kong constantly going back and forth, but he can't hurt you at all from where he stands. The belt he stands on switches right before he gets above either of the ladders, so he's no threat. But what if a fireball gets up here? Well, get this, they can't climb back down once they reach that top conveyor with Donkey Kong. The only danger is touching it if they're above you, so just wait for it to move and climb up. Once Mario's feet hit the top belt, the stage is completed. In the Japanese version, your introduction to the stage is less intense because, like I said before, the amount of fireballs that fly out of the start of the stage is equal to the loop. So again, like the elevator stage, much easier. Nothing you can't handle. Until this point, and this right here gets scary because you have to time this so you're in the air as it comes down. To make you feel better, here are the hitboxes for the jacks. You want to get that purse, that's on you, but you shouldn't attempt it if this little bastard is hanging around the ladder, because that extra weight of going down just a little longer is definitely enough to kill you. The final climb is now much scarier, so once again, safe zones. Stand here, gun it to the other side, pay attention to the jacks. A long spring is usually enough to make it up, but sometimes you gotta retreat and do a back and forth. The fireballs are spawning in pretty fucking quick. I didn't notice until recently, but you can tell which side of the screen you're on by looking at Pauline. She faces whichever side you're currently on. Guess you could use that to figure out where the firefoxes are gonna spawn. I am running out of stuff to talk about, so I'd like to mention these Donkey Kong character designs. This art was drawn by Xavier Leslie Cabarga. I've seen people use this art as some kind of proof that there's still a bit of Popeye in the final game, but I don't think this is really the case. Mr. Cabarga's art in general has this 20s, 30s charm to it. If I had a guess, I'm sure the name, premise, and characters fit the bill for a kind of parody of King Kong. I'm assuming all there was as reference for him was the sprite art and cabinet art, so you get this very classic looking Mario. Maybe because of this art, the ads for the ports took it a step further, with both Mario and Pauline looking like they came straight out of the time when movies were still black and white. You see these designs on a lot of things like stickers, cards, and the official cereal.
Kids, I'm gonna jump, you're gonna crunch. Here we go.
but DK plushies of the time look more like the cabinet art. What's funny is the board game box kind of mixes the two, but the actual DK piece is Kabarga's design. There's also an unreleased Mario that also looks like the original art. Someone found this at Goodwill with a tag that says 1978. Okay, I know I shit talk hammers a little, but I have been saved by this one before because I was able to get all of them to spawn on this side, then run to the other side, and get away scot-free. That's not exactly the best gamble, but it is an idea. One of my friends sent me a video of him playing, so let's see how he does. Oh, he doesn't have the sound set up right. Jesus. Bruh. Alright, that wasn't too bad. Oh, shit. That was really close to not fucking landing. Shit. Just unknowingly confined them to that corner. Fucking hitboxes. The hammer wouldn't even fucking help because they'd still pop up on that side. Fuck, if he got up, if he could have gotten up, he might have had a chance of cutting him off at the top corner and then getting to the very, very top. No! Damn, he made him spawn back over there. Oh, shit. Bruh. That would have been really funny if that one went down right there.
Let your boom and make it boom.
Yep. Oh, fuck! He moved forward, so it forced that one down. That's it. It's fucking over. Jesus. That much hate in your heart, huh? You know, I've never played the Donkey Kong 64 version, but I can definitely say it is an arcade perfect. Donkey Kong for some reason isn't symmetrical, so he shifts left and right when he pounds his chest, and the barrels slam off the walls instead of just falling off. Mario's movement when on a ladder seems weirdly smooth, and from this video of a guy getting over 1,000,000 points on it, there are comments from DK players saying that you apparently cannot steer barrels at all in this version. I remember wanting Donkey Kong 64 just to play the original arcade game, but now I want to try it just to see how weird it feels when something I'm so used to just does not work. Alright, well, at this point you have played every stage Donkey Kong has to offer, but I want to get to the 5th loop, where the game reaches its final order of stages. Over the past couple months, I've been playing a shitload of Donkey Kong, along with a bit of Tears of the Kingdom. One time, while half asleep, I sat down for my break at work and somehow made it to the end of the 5th loop. I don't know how the hell I got there, so damn brain dead, but I want to get there again and beat it. I know I can do it, damn it. This might be the one. Alright, it's still possible. Man, fuck this.
What's that monkey doing there? Carol!
Naughty monkey, naughty monkey!
What? Whoa. Video game world.
Holy shit. How long was I playing that game for? Oh fuck. Donkey Kong was very successful. It had about 18 ports if you want to count things like the Game & Watch and Coleco Mini Arcade. It got a segment on Saturday Supercade, which was a show based on arcade games. The games represented were Space Ace, Frogger, Hubert, Pitfall, Kangaroo, and Donkey Kong Jr. Nintendo got 2 reps in the fucking lineup. In the show, Mario apparently owns a circus in which Donkey Kong is the star of. Pauline is an animal trainer, and the basic premise is that she and Mario both try and chase down Donkey Kong in their circus van. There was a Game & Watch game called Donkey Kong Circus where Donkey Kong juggles pineapples while balancing on barrels, but as far as I can tell, Mario didn't own the circus. Mario's just sitting here on a girder and he laughs if Donkey Kong misses a pineapple. This game was a remake of Mickey Mouse Circus, which came out 7 months prior. It seems they even mixed up the game model numbers. Donkey Kong Circus is MK96 and Mickey Mouse Circus is DC95. I bring this up because people say Mario abused Donkey Kong in the circus, and that's why he escapes and the arcade game takes place, but I can't find evidence of that anywhere. Anyway, the whole show is comprised of this goofy wild monkey chase where Donkey Kong stops and gets involved with some other thing. Then Mario and Pauline try to catch him. At the end of each episode, he escapes again.
Hurry, Mario! We gotta catch Donkey Kong before he crosses the Mexican border!
Don't worry, Pauline. He won't get away this time. Oh, boy. There you go. Donkey Kong.
The game was so successful that Universal sued Nintendo in 1982. Not that Universal. Most people know about this, and it's pretty obvious why they felt this way, so Howard Lincoln hired John Kirby to represent Nintendo, and it turned out that in 1975, Universal Studios sued RKO to prove that King Kong's plot was in the public domain. Nintendo won, and as one last kick in the ass, the judge found Tiger's King Kong game, licensed by Universal, infringed on Donkey Kong. Nintendo awarded John Kirby a $30,000 sailboat named Donkey Kong and exclusive world rights to use that name for sailboats. There were 2 other lawsuits in relation to Donkey Kong. Remember Ikegami Tsushinki? They were the company Nintendo subcontracted to program the game. I don't definitively know if they were the sole programmers or if they just helped significantly, but either way, they signed a contract with Nintendo stating that they had exclusive rights to manufacture Donkey Kong arcade boards. In 1983, they sued Nintendo because Nintendo made about 80,000 boards on their own. They also felt they were owed compensation because Donkey Kong Jr. used their code. Donkey Kong's code was reverse engineered for Donkey Kong Jr. with 0 involvement from them. Nintendo instead decided to get another company, Iwasaki Giken Kōjō, to reverse engineer the DK arcade game code. Nintendo's position on the matter was that Ikegami was subcontracted and they were already paid for it, 10 million yen. Therefore, their work belonged to Nintendo. That exclusive Donkey Kong manufacturing deal was probably a bad idea for a game in massive demand. 65,000 arcade machines were sold in Japan alone. So Ikegami is saying 80,000 boards were made by Nintendo. I don't know how big Ikegami was at this time, but they made cameras. They weren't just code monkeys. Could they, by themselves, have filled all the orders? From what I've read, it kind of looks like Nintendo didn't want another Space Firebird situation where getting the game out to more people took too long. Anyway, long story short, they settled out of court on March 26, 1990. The final lawsuit is the most interesting. Donkey Kong is too big of a game and not all orders can be fulfilled. Enter Falcon. I can't really find much about this company, but they're responsible for one of the weirdest officially licensed Nintendo games. Crazy Kong is a weird version of Donkey Kong running on Crazy Climber hardware. That game also has a gorilla on a building, but he's just a goofy hazard there. Anyway, Crazy Kong was supposed to only be sold in Japan. That did not happen, and Nintendo got mad. Then Falcon came out with Crazy Kong Part 2, which was also not supposed to happen. That game added a little scene at the beginning where Crazy Kong escapes his cage. Miyamoto was actually impressed by that. Then these crazy bastards did Crazy Kong Jr. Nintendo unleashed their fucking ninjas for the first time and got the president of Falcon in jail, and Crazy Kong Jr. is now apparently lost media. I cannot find a damn thing about this game besides this image of what is supposedly the marquee. One day I do want to play these Donkey Kong bootlegs and make a video about them because these games seem like some crazy bullshit. I feel bad for anyone that grew up playing these gross ass games. What the fuck is that? Sorry for this video taking so goddamn long. I kind of had to learn how to play games because I got my thumb munched on by a dog and hitting up and down kind of hurt. Still somehow beat F-Zero X on Master though. Anyway, I hope one of these days I can finally not apologize for how long this takes to do. Because like I said, I only really work on these when I get off work. But anyway, hopefully you have some new appreciation for this game. Maybe you want to try it, and hopefully you think it's fun. Have a good one.